This is the Omaha Supernovas' new head volleyball coach, Chris McGown. Coach, thanks so much for joining me. We appreciate you being here.
Ravi, great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, this is this is the first time we've met, and I'm excited here because you've got a really interesting background, just super diverse in lots of different places. So I kind of want to start there. How do you feel like that's prepared you? Obviously, you've done the Athletes Unlimited, you've done college men, you've done Love a little bit last year as well. We try not to say their name too loud around here. You just have a super diverse background in coaching. How do you feel like that's got you ready to take on this challenge here in Omaha?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, athletes are athletes almost anywhere you go. And so I try not to make too big a deal about, hey, these are guys or these are girls or these are pros or these are college. At the end of the day, everybody's trying to become as good as they can possibly could be. And, but I think just having gone through it, understanding a little bit about the stakes at the professional level where, this isn't about, hey, I'm competing as a student athlete and kind of my priorities are maybe a little bit mixed. At the end of the day, if you're a pro, this is your livelihood. This is your job. You've got a limited amount of time that you can be great at this job. And so you're trying to maximize everything you can there. And so just kind of understanding the emotional and physical and mental kind of burden that comes with that, with being a pro and trying to stay at a very elite level. And kind of haven't seen that in a lot of environments. I think, for me anyway, I feel like it's given me a good perspective on what the athletes are going through, what they need, and what's required of all of us as an organization, as a team to kind of win championships.
Right, because obviously at a certain point, the volleyball is the volleyball of it, right? But your job is to figure out a way, how do I get the best version of each person, each player, regardless of level, gender, whatever, out of that. Have you noticed, obviously the older you get, you face different challenges in your personal life, right? Whether you're an athlete or a coach or whatever. Have you noticed as you've done some of these different things and in different levels of the sport that's more challenging and maybe you understand, maybe you do understand, hey, I'm an adult now. I understand what you're going through better than I do an 18-year-old. Has you noticed that at all as you've gone through your different stops?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And a lot of the athletes, I've seen them when they're straight out of college, the pros. And then I've seen them when they're long veterans, hey, I'm in my 30s now and I've been around a bit.
Got a family, a mortgage and whatever.
So it's really interesting to see the change that they go through too. And just, kind of the recklessness and impetuously of the younger people. And
white people just out of college can be a little reckless.
Imagine that, and then just the perspective that they gain themselves as time goes on. And you're kind of balancing just your maturity, their maturity, and trying to help some of the younger kids along and leaning on the experience of the athletes that have been around a while. But, it's fun to see just athletes mature and kind of, especially as they get older, if they can stick around the sport as older athletes, just the level of professionalism, I think, continues to rise because they have to work that much harder physically to keep at a high level. You're peaking as a physical specimen, as a human, right around your 20s. Kind of 18 to 22 is kind of when everybody is their most physical, but it's also when you're the dumbest, right? You're making the worst choices because you're still kind of immature.
Some of us are still there,
So you're trying to, it's this battle, right? You're trying to kind of keep that physicality going because ultimately volleyball is a really physical sport. And so you're trying to balance that physicality with, hey, gaining new levels of skill and making better decisions.
Sure.
And so it's fun to see as athletes mature, kind of the things they go, oh, you know what? I can't just go eat anything. I can't compromise my sleep. I can't compromise my emotional stability. And so they get better at all those things. It's cool to see.
We'll get to the Omaha of this all here in just a minute, but I want to take advantage of some of your expertise here because there's a couple things I find really fascinating. First, you've had experience in, I think, domestically, all the different versions of pro volleyball that we have between Athletes Unlimited, Love, and now the MLV.
Yeah.
How cool has it been, or interesting, or whatever adjective you would use, to see the growth of volleyball here in the U.S. from the professional level that very recently really didn't exist at all. And in the last few years, not only do you have kind of the two competing leagues, but then you also do have Athletes Unlimited as kind of this additional professional avenue. Like, how have you seen volleyball prepare itself for this moment for professional volleyball in the United States? And B, what do you think that looks like moving forward?
Yeah, it's been obviously very exciting for those of us that are involved in the sport, kind of finally seeing this thing that we're really passionate about kind of gain a little bit more mainstream, visibility. But I think it's like any startup organization or initial kind of foray into a business where, we're kind of running these little experiments, kind of seeing, hey, what version of this catches the most attention, catches the public's interest.
Because all three of those leagues have very different structures.
Very different structures, and, very different intents and business approaches. At the end of the day, obviously, we're a business and we're in this entertainment business that we're trying to, put this product out there that we think fans will enjoy. Sports is, I don't know, for me, my favorite form of entertainment, and so, but just the way that the kind of ownership models have moved into that space, and the ideas that they're, or the kind of values and intent that they've had, it's been really interesting. But for me, just the fact that people are starting to see, hey, there's value in this, and that, the sport that we love is now kind of more on a professional and public stage. It's been spectacularly, just encouraging for everybody, I think, that's involved in the sport.
I find it super interesting because I'm sort of a sports business and sports history nerd, right? So you've got the first time in a while that a major sports league has started, or multiple major sports leagues have started, without some sort of financial backing from kind of a pre-existing league, right? The WNBA had help from the NBA. The MLS had help from U.S. Soccer Federation, right? The volleyball leagues are kind of doing it, bootstrapping it on their own. And so I do think that's why you get such a diverse model, as you talked about, in terms of ownership styles and league setups and things like that. So I'm fascinated by all of that. One of the other things that I'm really fascinated by is you've got a lot of experience in the men's game. That's not something around here we have a ton of experience with, right? Obviously, University of Nebraska, Big Ten volleyball, the Supernovas, women's volleyball is huge here. You get into the mountain and western time zones, and men's volleyball starts to take a really big spot in kind of that world as well. Are you, I guess, maybe surprised isn't the right word, but are you surprised that men's volleyball hasn't seen some growth in other places, maybe at the same time as women's volleyball has, sort of on a national scale?
Well, this is where you go back historically to kind of, what are the underpinnings of women's volleyball and its growth. And we're going back to the 70s in Title IX, right? And so volleyball has been a sport that, for whatever reason, has really, really benefited from passage of Title IX. And, and so I feel like, again, we're so lucky that it kind of fit in where it did.
Yeah.
There's just no equivalent women's sport to football. The roster sizes in high school and college, there's no equivalent to that. And so volleyball was able to kind of, hey, we have to, create some equivalency here. Where are we going to go? And so volleyball kind of benefited from, Title IX and the football
having
rosters and having these opportunities. And so that's what kind of got us started. And then obviously it's a great sport, and it really entertaining to watch, high level women's volleyball. And so it, kind of once it got its chance, I think kind of just grew on its own. The boys, I think we're starting to see more growth. Boys volleyball is actually one of the fastest growing sports at the high school level in the country right now. It's just, again, trying to catch up and trying to figure out its place in the world as well. And it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see more and more. And I think as you look at the club level of play here in Nebraska, more and more clubs are offering boys programs, and hey, we've got boys teams that are now coming in. And so I think, again, it's such a fun sport to play. And once you get to be a little bit good at it, gets, hey, this is a great game and really entertaining. And again, super physical and more physical, I think, than people imagine.
Incredibly athletic, right?
Really, really phenomenal athletes that are playing at high levels. And so that was one of the things that was best, I don't know, for me about being, when I was coaching the guys, is just we'd laugh with our staff afterwards. Just, this is the most fun you could have as a coach, because every day in practice you're just blown away.
Yeah, you just see phenomenal things.
What
right?
just happened today? Like, that guy just touched 12 feet. He jumped and touched 12 feet, and he's hitting a volleyball 80 miles an hour.
Yeah,
you just, things where you're like, I didn't think humans could do this, and so they're doing it on a volleyball court. And so I think we're seeing more and more boys are starting to understand, hey, this is a sport that requires a lot of athleticism. It's a lot of fun. It's this team game, all the things that we like about it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more growth in the kind of lower Midwest as we get going.
Well, I appreciate you indulging some of my curiosities here. Let's get to the Omaha of it all. First, I guess, how did this come to be for you? I mean, obviously you got John Cook as general manager and co-owner of the Supernovas. No introduction needed for him here, certainly. But how did that connection happen, and what ended up bringing you to Omaha?
Yeah, so my dad was kind of legend in the volleyball coaching community, and was, obviously, I played for him at BYU, and then was out of coaching for a little while, kind of got back in, obviously, because of my dad. And so my dad and John had established a relationship, I want to say kind of 2010-ish, 11-ish, somewhere in there. And I think one of the best things about John as a coach, in my experience with him when he was a coach, was he was always trying to learn. And he was always trying to get better and trying to figure out, where are resources where I can learn something different than my competitors or than what I know now. And so I think one of the questions he always asked was, what are they doing in men's volleyball that we could bring over to women's volleyball? And so he actually went to a coaching clinic that we did across the river in Omaha here, over in Iowa, and brought his whole staff. And my dad was doing the clinic. And then after that, he invited my dad and I back to Lincoln with him, and we stayed at the house and kind of sat and just talked volleyball for the entire day in the office there. And that was kind of the start of the relationship. And so he and my dad were working together, and then later on, John and I would work together, and he'd bring me in. And during the season, obviously, especially when Jalen, because I coached Jalen when I was at BYU. He was an athlete for us during my 4 years there. And so we had this good relationship. And so I'd come in and they say, well, here's what's happening. What do you see? Tell us what you think. And they were always incredibly open to, again, my ideas or new ideas, and where can we get a little bit better. And so we'd had that relationship for a long time. And then when John left Nebraska and became the GM here, we actually had a conversation about coaching, and the timing wasn't quite right for me last season. But I just said, hey, if the door ever opens back up again, give me a call. And so I was, I think, high on the list when the door did open. And it was an easy conversation, because I knew what was happening here in Omaha with the Supernovas, just the support from the local community, the passion of the fans, the commitment of the organization to being great. Yeah. They really, at every level, want to do it the right way. They want to be the best. Not just the best volleyball franchise, but the best sports franchise in all of pro sports. And so I kind of understood that. And I knew what volleyball meant to Nebraska and to the fans here. And so, that relationship that John and I had, I think, kind of made that transition pretty easy.
So obviously you're familiar with the relationship between John Cook and Coach Reyes, Jalen Reyes, as you talked about. How important, as you are, I understand, putting your staff together here in Omaha, how important has that been? And kind of tell me about how you've decided to put that staff together.
Yeah, so the very first thing, I think, even when we were having initial interviews with the front office, they said, hey, what would you want to do as far as staff goes? And right off the bat, one of the things that was really important to me was to get a female coach on staff. And I just think it's critical for athlete relationships. I think it's critical for that perspective. We're coaching a women's game, and just having a female in there was a big deal for me. And so, that kind of kicked off a search for the right fit. And again, John had a relationship with Selene, and early on he said, hey, you should talk to her. And so as part of the conversation, part of the kind of, investigation of who might be out there, we had some initial conversations, and she all the Brazilians that I've ever been around, I love them. Right. And just, they're so passionate. They're so fired up. You don't have to get them, you don't have to work to get them excited about things. They just come excited.
Bring the energy.
Yeah, exactly. Just incredible energy. And so she's got incredible energy, incredible passion. And then she, had the requisite experience. I think, again, she was a former Olympian for Brazil. She played 17 years maybe in Europe as a pro. Yeah. And so just being able to kind of lean on that experience and knowing what these athletes are going through, knowing what it takes to kind of succeed and perform at that level, I think that experience is invaluable. And her ability to then relate to these professional athletes is going to be really, really invaluable as well. And so we were excited that she was, and again, timing in life is everything. And the timing kind of fit for her, just like it fit for me. And so being able to get her was awesome. And then the organization front office team knew how much they wanted Thomas. And they'd locked him up really early on, and he's done an amazing job. Obviously, he's stepping in last season and taking the team as far as they did. And just, he knows everyone too. And he in the sport, and he's encyclopedic in and he'll name players. Oh, and this player here and this obscure little thing. And he's a lot like Jalen in that regard. Jalen, again, encyclopedic knowledge of all things volleyball. And so Thomas is a lot the same way. And just, he's thinking about it all the time, and he's got great relationships with the athletes here. And so I think I'm super fired up for our staff.
So speaking of timing in life, what's the next few months look like for you guys? I think November is when you kind of start or are looking at starting up in terms of workouts and things like that. What do the next few months look like for the Supernovas?
Yeah, well, we've signed the entire roster. And so I think that was one of the things that the front office did really, really well, is they got out in front of and kind of saw what was coming, right? Hey, league's expanding. Both leagues are expanding. Players are going to be at a premium. We need to get this done early. And so I think they did an incredibly good job of getting that done in a timely fashion. So we've got the roster completely signed. And now kind of the priority is just, one of the things that you often see is, hey, we don't have very much ramp up between the time that we report and the time that we start playing matches. And so what happens is you try to put in all this work, and if the athletes don't come in kind of physically prepared for that level of work, we'll start to see some kind of, chronic, use injuries, that sort of thing. And so the message from us has been, from kind of the start of the summer on, is, hey, we're going to have this kind of transition, but we're going to ramp up to, so that when you come in, on the start date, December 1st, you're going to be in great shape. And again, it's one of the things that organizationally you can see where the Supernovas have excelled, that we've provided them strength resources, mental strength resources, nutrition and sleep resources, a trainer, just everything kind of going into, hey, lean on these people to get good programs in place, whatever you need to be great when you show up. That's there for them. The league has kind of understood that December and January, happening pretty fast. And so they're going to allow us an OTA period in November. We're trying to see exactly what that looks like for us. But we'll probably bring athletes in early for OTAs, and again, trying to help us ramp up physically and get some systems in place, and just have the athletes kind of learn, hey, here's how I'd like us to play volleyball. And, some of the little individual nuances of, hey, here's, mechanically what that might look like for you, and just system wise. And so I think the OTA period is going to be a big help for us. And one of the things that's been really encouraging is when I kind of sent the word out, hey, you can come in for OTAs in November.
Mhm.
What kind of interest would you have in that? Top to bottom, the entire roster was like, we want it, we're in,
Yeah.
I want to work hard. And so just seeing just how fired up they are, the commitment of all the athletes to, hey, let's get in here and let's do something special with this season. It's been really encouraging.
That's awesome. That is Coach Chris McGowan of your Omaha Supernovas. Coach, it was great to meet you. I'm sure we will talk plenty as the next few months and as the season comes up, but really appreciate your time here today and letting us get to know you a little bit.
Ravi, it's been a pleasure. Thanks again.
Absolutely.